Testing 1, 2, 3. Drew, you got me? Gonna give you this when you're ready. I do not want to take the credit for this. All credit goes to Martellus. I'm sure you recognize him. Martellus Bennett, 10-year NFL veteran, former Patriot, Super Bowl champion. But that is not the Martellus we're here to talk about today. We're here to talk about Martellus, the creator, author, illustrator, visionary, and so much more.
Snacker.
For those of you who don't know, Martellus founded the Imagination Agency in 2014, which is a multimedia creative production company focused on children's literature, entertainment, and education. In other words, it's a small studio with giant ideas building fantastical, magical worlds filled with weirdness for you to escape to. Marty, thanks for joining us today.
Namaste.
So specifically, we're going to talk about your new book, which is called Dear Black Boy. We have copies for everyone. Thank you, Lisa, and the Diversity and Inclusion Committee for purchasing copies for everyone here today. If you haven't gotten one, get one after. I've read it several times, taken in the illustrations. It is awesome. And Martellus, can we start by you just giving an overview of the book and its message for everyone who
Should we move over? I feel like we're not in the center of the room.
No, because we're in the center of where Drew needs us.
Okay, yeah.
That matters.
I mean, we had a chance to be center of attention, but we're like off right, you know what I'm saying? You had the tab key a couple more times. Yeah, so Dear Black Boy for me, as growing up in the community that I grew up in, like when it's been happening to me every single day, and I'm kind of pissed off about it happening all the time. But when someone first sees a black male figure, the first thing they ask you is, what sport do you play? Right? The idea is like they find value in us as athletes, and for that starts to reflect how we look at ourselves, because you want to feel valuable in the world that you're living in. So for me, I want the world to see that when they look at a black boy, they shouldn't just see athletes, they should see dreamers, architects, writers, creators, ninjas, astronauts, wherever they want to be. And I want black boys, when they look at themselves, to see the same thing. Like they have value to the world, they're valuable to the world, and they're valid not only as how they perform on the field, but also how they perform in other areas of life. I would say they're going to have this NFL draft, everyone's going to celebrate the players that's being drafted. And the NFL is 75% black, the NBA is 65% black, and the tech industry is like 7% black. The black guys in tech, none of us know who they are. But the black guys in sports, we know all of their names, where they come from, their stories. We see the representation in there. We can relate to those people because we have shared stories. But the thing is, to me, I want to put the doctors on the platform. I want to put the writers on the platform, and I want to put the creators on the platform, so that when kids look into the world, they know that they are represented in these areas. It's not very huge, I think, but for a young age, that they could start dreaming those dreams for themselves. And that when they do see those kids, those people or those men that's in those positions, they're not anomalies. It's very possible for every single kid. You're more likely to become a doctor than you are to make it to the NFL. It's only 1,500 NFL players. That's probably like 15. I never did the numbers on it, but just throwing out there's a lot of doctors. There's more space for doctors. We all need more doctors. We don't always need more athletes. And for me, I don't know if you want me to keep talking, but yeah, your dress is nice.
Thank you.
So yeah, for me, so my whole thing is, how do I introduce them to all the other opportunities and the other possibilities in the world? And it's one thing to tell them that they could go be anything, but it's another thing to go out there and actually be all these things that you tell them they could be. So for me, when they see me, I don't want them to see an athlete or a guy. I don't want them to aspire to be the player I was on the field. I want them to aspire to be the writer or the creator or the dreamer that I am. And that's like my ultimate goal in life. And I try to do the same thing for my daughter. I don't want to tell her she could go be everything if I'm going to try to be everything I ever wanted to be,
And so this book is for children, Martellus, and I know your work at the Imagination Agency is focused specifically on African-American children and creating black characters.
Yes.
I know you've gotten a lot of criticism and pushback, and a lot of people who ask, why not all children? What is your answer to people who don't understand
What's up, dog? Long time no see. Yes. I think for me, a lot of people talk about diverse books, right? First thing I always say to be is usually just go to the library. There's plenty of books for your kids. Because if you think about it, only 6% of children's books represent kids of color. There's more books that represent animals and creatures than there are for kids of color, which is quite ridiculous. But if you really go back to it, for 250 years, black people weren't allowed to read or write, so they weren't even making books for us. So to try to make a dent in that is really hard, because that's 250 years of publishing that we wouldn't even get a chance to be published. And when we were able to read and write, we still had to overcome the fact that they wouldn't print or publish our books. So there's not a lot of black authors, there's not a lot of black writers and illustrators in the children's book space, or most spaces when it comes to literature. So how can you inspire a kid to want to be a writer or a creator if they don't see themselves from a young age in the things that they read? You usually have something that sparks your interest right away, whether it's a book or a movie that you've seen that's like, I want to make this movie, I want to do this, whether it's stop motion, like who did a stop motion film? Like you fall in love with these things at a young age, but if you don't see yourself in these things, they're hard to fall in love with it. Like it's just like falling in love with somebody that's totally opposite from you all the time. It's just like, man, I love my wife sometimes, but then I hate her sometimes. Not my wife, I'm just talking metaphorically. I actually love my wife. Is this on camera? Hey baby, I love you. So for me, I try to, as black kids, we don't get to experience escapism the same way that our counterparts do. Our books that we get are really realities. They're right outside our doors. We know people who experience this. We don't get to be in space, so Star Wars. We get one black person in Star Wars, and we're just happy to see him. We don't have there's one black wizard in Harry Potter, so we don't really get the chance to dream about going to Hogwarts or these fictitious worlds. And I think it's important for kids to visit these other worlds, because they come back changed and realize their world doesn't have to be the way that it is. So escapism is really important. I think kids should experience it. So I prefer to create escapism for them to go to these places, and it allows you to dream and dream big. That's why places like Wakanda are great, because it's like this whole black place where it's technology and it's geniuses and it's celebrated. So you could think that you could build your own Wakanda in the real world. It may not look as cool as Wakanda, but it'll be just as many cool people there, So how do we get them to dream bigger? And it's about seeing yourself. So I write stuff with a lot of kids, stuff with black kids. I'm black, so it's the easiest thing to do, so yeah, I'm a black kid. I knew what I wanted to read when I grew up, and it wasn't there. A lot of people say talking about diverse books. I'm really thinking about diversifying the library, right? If I go to the library, I should be able to, I shouldn't be a needle in a haystack to be like, hey, can I find a book with a brother in it? I went to the comic book store because I just started writing more comics. And just doing research, I'm like, man, I'm really gonna make a dent in this space. Because I went to the comic book store, it's like, hey man, just point me to all the black superheroes. I wanna make sure that I wasn't stepping on any toes, making new black superheroes. And he was like, yeah, you only have Black Panther. And I was like, damn, that's it? Like there's no other black superheroes in this entire store, man? Most black men I know are built like the superheroes everyone write about. Like I know, so just try to find more of it and spread it around so they can see themselves in as many forms as media as possible.
This is something that I am going to be honest, I had never really consciously thought about until I had a conversation with you in Atlanta, when that was the first time I learned about Dear Black Boy.
Yeah.
And it just sparked a lot of curiosity in me, and I started doing a good amount of research. I've thought about trying to put some of the statistics out there for today, but I'm really not
I could throw
a
them out
math
there.
girl, is not my forte.
Yeah.
But as you mentioned about, there's a drastic amount of children's books that are written about animals and even inanimate objects more than children of color, which I found really interesting. And I started to reflect back on my own childhood and thinking about the media, toys, everything that I consumed, and realizing I had never consciously thought about it. But for me, I mean, I'm obviously white, and I was a bleach blonde little white girl, and there were so many characters everywhere that I could relate to. I guess I had never thought about it as a kid. It never went through my mind, but Barbie, Rapunzel, Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty.
Every princess. Only black princesses was Tiana, and she was a frog for 90% of the movie. It's like,
and that was 72, I believe, over 70 years after the first Disney princess, which was Snow White.
And then it only came out in 2 theaters.
Yeah,
so it didn't have a worldwide release, and they did it in 2D when CGI was the biggest thing. In Frozen, there's not one black person in Frozen. Every time I go to the movies, I'm just looking to spot a black character because my daughter's in and she loves Frozen. I'm just like, man, no one in Arendelle looks like you. And it's kind of messed up. They'd be like, well, Arendelle's not a real place. Like, you made it up. You can make up black people that live there in the snow. I know it's cold, but we got brothers in Boston. It's cold here too. Like, it's crazy, you know what I'm saying? But the funniest thing not the funniest thing, but the thing that you said is that you weren't aware of it. Right? You didn't have to be aware of it because, like, I always tell people, like, when you take your kids to the movie, you don't have to worry about them being represented in a movie. Right? When we take our kids to the movies, we want them to be able to see themselves as well. We have to make sure that they get to see themselves doing these wonderful things, and it always comes back where it's like, man, I just wish that one character in there was black or somebody. I took my daughter to see The Nutcracker when I was here playing for the Patriots, and everybody in The Nutcracker was white. There was one Asian guy. He was really good, too. He had a great quads. And he was jumping high, and I was kind of fascinated. I was really high, but I was really fascinated by what was going on stage. And I was just like, man, his quads is like, the way he's jumping is amazing, right? Like, how did he do that? But anyway, my daughter was like, she's like, Dad, can I do that? I was like, yeah, you could do that. And I was like, she's like, no one up there looks like me, so can I do that? But recently we've been able to take her to the all-black ballet that she got the experience to see herself in. So, like, when we go to musicals and all these things I introduce my daughter to, I get upset because I don't get to see myself on stage. I'm like, man, every time a brother come out, I'm like, yeah! Everybody else be quiet. I'm like, yeah, baby, he right there. I'm right here. Everybody shut up. These are his lines. Let's leave him alone. Everybody listen what the brother got to say. Then about 5 minutes later, he no longer in the play, and I'm just like, I want his autograph. You know what I'm saying? Like, where you at, bro? Let's go get dinner. So it's hard. Like when you're represented all the time, you don't really think about representation because you see yourself all the time. But when you start to not see yourself in a space, you start to wonder, like, man, like, do I belong here? Can I be here too? Is there room for me? And I think that's like the biggest thing. I think once the world starts to notice that the room doesn't really reflect the world, then that's when we start solving the problem. It's not a problem I can solve, or for like black people, if we really want to make change, white people have to vote for us to have the change that we want in our lives too, right? Because everybody has to want to see that change for everybody else. It's not something that we could just take on by ourselves, and everyone is involved in making that change. It takes all of us.
And so to get a little more into the message directly in the book, because I know you're on this campaign right now that's Dear Black Boy, Now What? What about when the game is over? You grew up in Alief, Texas? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yes,
Alief, Texas.
We call it the SWAT.
The SWAT?
Yeah, because it got bad there. So they call it the SWAT, Southwest Alief, Texas, because so many people, there's so much crime and people dying and stuff like that. It's sad, but hey, yeah, I'm here. A lot of my friends aren't. I'm just happy I've been able to be here, so yeah.
So that's what I want to talk about is your friends that aren't. And I just want to read a passage from, I know you wrote an awesome op-ed in the Washington Post that I've read several times, but in it, about your own experiences growing up, you wrote that a message that was pushed on you is, you can't really love football if you love other things, they tell us. The marriage of player and sport is meant to be monogamous. I was really struck by that line and curious what you experienced and what other black boys where you grew up experienced that really pushed you into sports and how it affected your dreams beyond a court or a field.
Yeah, there's a conditioning that goes on with the athlete. I always tell parents that when they sign their kids up for sports, you're not just signing a waiver so that if they break their leg, your insurance have to cover it. You're signing over their identity because they become the sport, they become the player. And the way that the brainwashing goes for the football player from a young age is that we're taught not to have other interests because it takes you away from the game. You're not a team player. You don't love the game. Coaches always be like, you don't love the game. You always got these other interests, or he has too many interests outside of the sport to focus on the sport, which I think is ridiculous because what we need to be doing is raising fully functional human beings. Because when guys leave the game of football, every single guy has to leave the game of football, even Tom Brady. When they leave the game of football, they don't know who they are. They don't know what they need to do, and there's a form of PTSD that guys go through that they don't really know how to react, and they don't know their place in the world because they separated themselves from the world for so long that now you're back in it. And it's a struggle to readjust in a world when you've been at the top of the pinnacle, or to start over and work your way up. So a lot of guys, they try to stay as close to the game as possible, and they don't really get to go explore the worlds like they should be. So from a young age, I was fortunate enough where I was like a little asshole. So growing up, so I was fortunate enough to really speak my mind from a young age. I remember telling Calvin Murphy one time, I quit Calvin Murphy's team. He was coaching me, I didn't like his style. So I was just like, I ain't playing for you no more, Calvin. I don't like the way you coach. Dad need to be on a new team. And everybody's like, you just quit on Calvin Murphy? Hell yeah, I quit on Calvin Murphy. And but from a young age, like I grew up in band, I grew up playing, instruments, and I was a mathlete, and I played basketball, played football. I was an NBA drafted in high school, then I decided to go to college to play football, and I was in plays, I pretty much did anything that was interesting to me, and I was an honor roll student, so I did pretty well in school, but my friends, it was a little bit different. The difference I thought it was that my parents, from a young age, I didn't ever have an emphasis on sports, basketball, or band. If I was in band, my parents was in front row. If I was in basketball, my parents were front row. If I was playing football, I could hear my dad shouting all the time. So whatever it was I chose to do, my parents were there front row. So they didn't put an emphasis on either or, right? So the community does, though. My parents would be there, but the community wouldn't come to support. If I walk into the barbershop, the barbershop is where a lot of stuff in our community happens. If you walk into the barbershop and you got a basketball game, everyone's like, man, did you see him play last night? The game was so good. Like, you got to go see the boys play, and the whole community will come see the kids play. Now, if I walk in after a symphony wearing my suit, the whole community wouldn't come see the symphony. You just go ahead and go do that on your own. As a kid, you feel like it's not valuable to your community, so then it's not valuable to you. So I tell the community all the time that we have to celebrate the genius in every kid. If it's athletics, there's a genius in athletics, and if it's architecture, wherever it is, they should be supported in the same way that we support the athletes. And I feel like a lot of my teammates didn't have that, and even in the NFL, a lot of guys didn't have that. So that's why they want to hold on to football so much, because they feel like it makes them valuable in the world, when really it's not who you are, it's just what you do. And your value in self should not be in that as all. You still are just as valuable without the game. But it's hard to get guys to understand that, because people don't celebrate the same. I was talking to this, I won't name drop, but I was talking to this guy. I was interviewing him for this TV show I made up. It was cool, it was weird. But I'm interviewing this guy, and after I finished interviewing him, I wanted to cry, right? Because he's older than me, he retired, and he was telling me, like, we was bare knuckle boxing. I don't know why the hell anybody want to do this. And he's like, yeah, you only can do it in Wyoming and Montana. I was like, that makes sense, right? So he's prepared, and I'm like, man, what made you get into this? And he was just like, well, after I left the game, people kept asking me what I'm up to, what I'm doing. I wanted to just show them that, like, I'm still doing stuff. He's like, I have a company, I'm on TV, and he was just really trying to prove his worth to the world. I was like, bro, like, you're doing well, like, you're doing this stuff, like, you don't have to prove that you're still valuable because you're not on the field. I understand. And then he asked me, like, would you go back and play? I was like, nah. He's like, if they called you right now, you wouldn't go and play? I was like, hell no, not right now. Like, look at I don't want to go play football right now. I'm happy as hell. And then he goes, well, I would call. I'm like, man, dog, it's been like 6 years since you played. You're like 39 playing outside linebacker. You chose the bare knuckle boxing because he was like, oh, I'm going to sell out pay-per-view, and then I'm going to go knock this guy out, and everybody's going to be talking about me. And I was just like, oh, man, cool. And I called my brother. I was like, man, up. I was like, bro, like, I didn't realize it. Like, I get a lot of calls about guys getting ready, thinking about retirement, and a lot of guys are scared because they don't know who they are, what they want to do, or where they want to go. And I just said at some point, they should start putting breadcrumbs down to return to who they truly are.
So related to that, another passage from your op-ed, which was, again, extremely well written.
Thank you.
You wrote, as Black boys, we learn to dunk on people in the paint, not paint beautiful pictures. We stiff-arm defenders, not defend people in court. We cross over our opponents, not cross over into business. We learn code names for play calls, not how to code. We touch the top of the backboard, not the stars. We get introduced to the world based on our athletic attributes, our superpowers. So my question to you is, how do we as a society rewrite what young black boys think of as their superpowers?
Well, I think it starts with us, the black men in the community, to step up in roles and share what we've learned and where we've gone with them. I think also, like, when you see a black boy, it's good to ask them, hey, what are you interested in, right? And they will talk to you for hours about all the stuff they're interested in. They probably won't even bring up sports, right? It's the craziest thing. But if you go like, oh, how's basketball? They'll talk about that all day too. But if you really listen to them, once you break through that, because they feel like that's what you want to know about them, like how they think about sports, and you really listen, and then you let them show you their dreams, and you try to help them, you try to pour fuel on that fire to what that dream may be. Instead of telling them how to dream or telling them what to think, it's about teaching them how to think and teaching them how to dream, right? And for me, we feel like superheroes because when we're on the field, you are a superhero. Like, those are, like, Michael Jordan was our superhero. When he was floating from the free throw line, that was like he was flying in the sky. We didn't have black superheroes. We couldn't just watch Spider-Man or Superman or Batman or any Aquaman. I mean, Aquaman is in water. You know, they say most brothers can't swim. So I'm okay with Aquaman, you know what I'm saying? So, and, you know, all the mans didn't look like us. So, like, we couldn't really fall in love with superheroes, so we fall in love with the players on the court. And for me, it's about allowing them to dream the dreams that they want to dream and showing them that they do belong. Like, this space is for you as well. It's not just a space for those that don't look like you. So it's really about accepting them for who they truly are and not trying to have an idea or expectations of who you think they should be.
So it starts with black men, but it can't end there. Why should anyone of any race take this book home and read it to their children?
Oh man, I think it's important for white kids to read about black kids. I mean, it's a form of empathy. You start to learn that black kids are just like you, right? If I could read novels and I see black kids doing magic, I was like, oh, they like magic too. Maybe we could relate over magic together. Like, if he's going to space, I'm interested in space. I want to go to NASA. We like NASA. That is a common denominator between us. But if there's not literature for white kids to read about black kids and escape and experience escapism through black kids and be able to put themselves in their shoes and the things that they consume, whether it's the movies or cartoons, wherever it is, I think they will be able to relate. So that's like the coolest thing ever. So, like, this kid is like, it's always funny because when I go talk to young black kids, they're way more aware of what's happening in the world than white kids are, right? And I think that's because their world gets real right away, right? White kids have more time to dream dreams and dreams. 8-year-old kids talk to me about buying their parents' homes. I'm like, man, that's the 8-year-old kid dreaming of buying a home. Like, he should still be dreaming of, like, finding unicorns and Loch Ness monsters. Why is he thinking about purchasing a home for his parents? But and they ask him, like, we talk about, they know about killings, they know what's going on in the world, they know about brutality, because we have to teach our black kids to survive, right? White kids and white parents get to teach their kids how to thrive in this society, where we always have to feel like, hey, we got to teach them all these different steps of how they're going to survive, what may happen, this may happen, this may happen. So they don't think about escaping into other worlds, they think about escaping from the world that they're currently living in, which is two different aspects of thinking. So we have to change that perspective where they feel safe in the world. And once they feel safe in the world, they can really relax. You got to remember that we're not from America, right? So we're foreigners here. We were ripped from our homes, and most of us don't know where our homes are. So we live in a place where we don't really feel like we belong here in the States, and we don't know where we belong back there. So we have no history that we could really tie our roots to. So for there, we always feel like we're in a purgatory, right? And in this purgatory, we don't really get to relax. If I take you to a foreign land and drop you in there, like if I drop you in the jungle, the only thing you think about while you're in the jungle is survival. Right? We're always in the jungle. Like, so we're always thinking about survival, while other people just get to enjoy and just move around and flow around. So I think it's about making this world feel like a safer place for us all. So there's so many things that we're fighting that if everyone joined in those fights for us, which are the right fights, and be on the right side of history, I think the world would be a more beautiful place, especially when the black boys, we're doing a disservice by not letting the black boy dreams, because those are great inventions. Those innovative kids aren't they're not able to put their impact on the world. They're not able to put their touch on the world, to put their imaginations into the world, because they're so caught up in surviving. And it's hard to use your imagination for anything else but surviving when you're in that situation.
Now, with Gronk retired and your brother joining the Patriots, I know a lot of fans want you to come back, but you've already come out and said that it's too important to you to put your effort into this. What are you going to be doing moving forward instead of returning to the football field to continue this fight to make a better space for all children to be able to dream?
Yeah, I think I think by following your dreams, you give other people permission to follow their dreams. So if we want anyone to follow their dreams, the best thing we could do is follow our dreams. And there's something that's impactful about seeing someone complete and chase their dreams and actually make it happen. So for me, the number one thing I could do is actually continue to make stuff, right? I have to make more books, more apps, more games, more movies, and they will see themselves in the movies, but also when they peel back the layers of the books and everything, they see that someone looks like them, made it just for them as well. So I think there's power in the fact that I think the most important thing I could do is just never stop creating. And I think I could impact the world with my creativity. I believe that imagination saves lives. Imagination can change the world, because without imagination, you cannot create solutions. So my thing is to help groom their imaginations by creating worlds for them to visit.
All right. If it's okay with you, we'll open up to some questions.
Yeah, let's go. Let's do this.
You
got a question. You get a question. You get a question. You get a question. My friend.
Two things. When I heard about this event, and I've been kind of following what you're doing, something struck me both this past season, this football season, and important event, the Boston Marathon in Boston, where I was wondering if you could speak. Is there any frustration with black athletes losing, in a sense, of individuality when there's kind of this funnel where there's kind of this group of athletes, and recognizing faces isn't as easy. Take somebody like Daron Harmon versus Rex Burkhead.
Yes.
I talked to Patriots fans, wouldn't know Daron Harmon's face in the street, might know somebody like Danny Amendola or Rex Burkhead.
It's because Boston's white as hell.
I'm with you there. I heard something that upset me last week or whenever the Boston Marathon was, where we obviously we're patriotic here in New England. We get excited when we see an American win the Boston Marathon. But this last year, I overheard who won the Boston Marathon this year. It was some black guy. It's literally what I heard, and it bothered me because I don't know if it's this arrogance or it's laziness to learn the pronunciation of a name, or I'm just asking you, do you see the same thing where black athletes are glossed over?
Yeah, I see it every day. So you think about a Kaepernick taking a knee. You think about myself when I took a knee, sitting down on the bench. Like, I see it every single day. But the thing is funny, because this earlier I said, I wrote this quote down when I was thinking early. I think all the time. And I said, silencing individualism is a major crime. Right? And what I mean by that, by limiting individualism with people and not letting them share their stories, we do all ourselves a crime, because those are the moments to learn, and those are moments to have impactful people do impactful things. If we have everyone doing hive thinking and thinking the same, then everything will become the same. As a black athlete going into this world, you have it where people really, all they want you to do is entertain. Right? Just play the sport. I didn't come here to hear you talk about the world that you live in. You have money. You don't have to deal with this. But the world doesn't care if you $1 million, if you a black man in a Benz or a black man in a Honda Accord, you still a black man in that car, and you still have to experience the same blackness no matter what level of money that you have. Trust me, I know from personal experience. So for us, it's always about, you have to have those soldiers who are speaking up and are trying to make a difference and trying to make an impact, but also people have to listen, right? The worst thing that happens is no one really listens. The black man has been crying out for years and nobody wants to hear it, right? Even when you think about how they teach black history, right? They teach black history from the civil rights movement when things begin to change. No one likes to talk about all the time before that they'll spit trying to get the change to happen. Right? So it's like, for me, it's like, but y'all just gloss over so much history that actually is up as hell, right? Because a lot of people are afraid of the past and ashamed of the past, and people don't really heard it. It's like, oh, slavery's not that bad. What? All right, come to my house, right? Come to my house for a week, right? And I just throw pig intestines at you, and I don't have cotton, but just pull the weeds in my garden. And I can't even fathom someone even saying that. Like, I've had people tell me that to me. I'm just like, first of all, did you go through slavery? No. So second of all, I usually curse right there, but I'm not gonna curse right now. But yeah, so as a black man, I understand that like we're saying things and we're doing things, but we're not always being heard. And to that could be discouraging because you're sharing your message, but people aren't hearing your message. And if that's not their world, they can't really relate, right? They don't really get it. But we're not actually like and they want to sympathize. Nobody wants, and they act like we're asking for sympathy, but it's not. Sympathy's easy. We're asking for empathy, right? To empathize and be able to feel the things that we feel, the way that we feel, and why we feel these things is valid because it's our experience, right? It's not your experience, it's our experience. And therefore, for us to for you guys to understand, you got to be able to step into our shoes and look at it from our perspective. If I ask who in here wants to be black for a day?
Just a bit.
Right, you know what I'm saying? Because everyone knows what it means to be black in the world, right? Like, you know what comes with that, right? The fact that no one wants to volunteer to be black says, I like my skin tone, by the way. I'm sure you're happy in your skin. I'm not saying you to change, but if I was like, man, you want to be black for a week, you're probably like, man, the whole world will change for you. And it's crazy because the only thing that's changed is not your personality, it's not who you are, it's just your skin color. And that's the problem. I don't know if I answered your question. Yes.
That was a great question.
I'm curious, you mentioned about when you played in Boston and we're here, you played in other cities, been in other cities. So compare being a black athlete here to the other cities that you played in.
Yeah, Wisconsin is the most racist. Boston was second, and it's just like my wife's half white, and she's white and black, but she has like a white depiction to herself, and it's a thing that she grew up in Oakland with her dad, who's a black man. But when we walked together with my daughter through Boston, you could feel the way that people look at you, you know what I'm saying? And if I could feel it, I know my daughter could feel it too, so it bothers me, you know? And it's not, Wisconsin's, whoa, Wisconsin's crazy, right? It's the most racist place in the U.S. right now. Milwaukee's just ridiculously segregated, and just the poverty and the way that black boys are targeted and the way they're more likely to be suspended for the same incident that a white kid does. They're just expelled from school. Like, it's just all set up to fail. Like, it's the prison pipeline, really, the school to prison pipeline. But yeah, if I go through the city and I do what Gronk does, I go to jail, right? It's frowned upon, like, oh, this guy's not focused, he's not that. I love Gronk, Gronk's great, but if Gronk was black, he would have been treated totally different in his entire career. So, it's been crazy, which we all could probably agree on.
How is sports media different in Boston than New York?
Sports media, I think it's pretty much the same. I mean, you guys have the stories to write, and you got quick turnarounds, and
How
I.
do you treat your as athletes?
Oh no, the sports beat writers in Boston was very nice to me. Like, I mean, I get along with most people, so I never really had issues with any, except for one fat dude in Chicago named Brad Biggs. I can't stand him to this day. But that's only my entire career. That was the only guy that I have issues with, and I told him this straight up. He knows how I feel about him, so I can say it to you guys, because I told him I didn't like him in person. But that was the only guy I ever had real trouble with. I think that the sports media, usually they have to come into eclectic locker rooms all the time. So you have black players, white players, all these different guys from all these different walks of life. That's what football is so great. The locker room is so diverse. You got guys who like to hunt, guys who like to fish, you got guys who like to rap, you got guys. So it's really fun to be in that environment because you get to meet so many different people from so many different places in the world, and that becomes kind of cool.
Per your comments earlier about like marrying, coaches wanted you, personnel wanted you to solely marry football and your personality and not, go into your other interests. I think most people from the outside probably think that Bill Belichick is like the penultimate person that would want you to solely focus on football. Was that your experience? And if not, like, how did they help set you up to be successful when you were going to walk up through it?
I didn't wait for them to set me up. You know what I'm saying? I threw myself the lob, but the thing that Bill does, he understands personality. Like really, the Patriots for me were one of the most freeing places to play because they accepted me for who I was. And like Robert Kraft, when I had my first book came out, I was like, Rob, can I get my brother? I call him Brother Kraft. Yo, Brother Kraft, can I get my books in the pro shop? He's like, yeah, just go talk to such and such. Here's his card, call him. So they put my books in the pro shop. They showed my short film to the team on Family Day. They embraced me as a creative. They already knew that how I was. And I told Bill, like, if you want the best out of me, I need the space to be myself and create. As long as I don't cause any problems here, I like Bill because as long as you're at work doing football stuff, they don't really care. But once you leave, you don't really care as long as you're not being conduct detrimental to the team. But that's they could use that anytime they want to, by the way. That's why they put it in the contract like that. But they embraced me fully, and I really love. That's why I really love it. And the city embraced my creativity too. So that's why I always feel like Boston is like, if I could retire a Patriot, I would. I play for so many teams, I don't even know where I would retire at. You know what I'm saying? It's like dating for so long and dying before you got married. Which one of the girls get to talk at my funeral, you know? yeah, yo, you get your turn. Like, I got it right in my will, you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, get the turn, you get a turn. And I don't want her to talk because that ain't go that well, you know? So that's how football is, so yeah.
You mentioned Boston, the second most racist place that you've been. That stigma, from your personal experience, why do you feel that way?
It's just the way that it's kind of hard to explain experiencing racism, right? It's like sometimes it's just in the air. Like you could walk in a room and you just be like, okay, I probably need to get out this room right now. It's just kind of like they didn't expect me to be here. And I didn't want to be in a place I'm not expected to be in right now because I don't know how it could go. But it's really more of a sort of, you can feel it thing. People do say things as well. I get it's a little bit easier once they find out you play for the Patriots, right? They treat you differently than, you know, if I have a brother that's in town that doesn't play sports, that's not tall, that doesn't look like a player, then he has a whole different experience in Boston than I do, right? So it's just like when they know that you play sports, you get a little different treatment because everyone loves the Patriots. But when you're just like your average Joe, or I guess in this case, your average Jerome, in the city, it's just a different experience, you know? So, I mean, it's just weird, yeah. Guess you guys never experienced reverse racism, have you? It's just, it doesn't exist, actually, but yeah.
So, being a media company, how do you, it seems like they promote bad behavior.
Yeah!
How do you get, like, say, Matthew Slater? Everybody loves him. We know Matthew Slater because he's a Patriot guy. But he's a decent human being.
He's a
How
great...
do you get, stories like Matthew Slater out in the regular public, non-sports related, where it's always seems like the negative stories of the and I mean, even when it's black commentators that are commenting on that story, they're not like they want to promote the bad stories. They don't want to promote the good. Oh, this is a feel-good story.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? How do they reverse that?
Well, I think one is tough because the evil shit is what sells the media, right? So if you want clicks, you get the most outlandish title that you possibly could clickbait on that, and people clicking. I'm like, well, shit wasn't even that bad. The title made it seem like it's so bad. So I think for that is to share those stories more, give those stories of players. Promote those stories into the world. The same way we push the idea of a guy catching a game-winning touchdown. There's so many guys doing great things in the community that no one in the world even knows that they're doing it. You know what I'm saying? Where there's like, for instance, like my brother, like he goes to where places have food deserts and help them learn how to build their own community gardens and turn it into a farmer's market, fights obesity. There's so many guys doing so many different things that no one in the world even knows about because no one really celebrates those things because it's not that interesting. No one really wants to know those things. So you have to help the players' voices be heard. Like you have to amplify it. You guys have the ability to amplify the good, but it seems like everyone focuses on amplifying the bad, right? A guy get pulled over for a traffic violation, and it's all over the news. I'm like, everyone in here probably had gotten pulled over for a traffic violation, didn't renew their license, probably got arrested for something so simple, but then it's like the way it's used and the way they flip it is like, this guy's not focused, he's trouble for the team, but it's just like a normal human being thing to get pulled over and be like, oh, my license is expired, oh, I didn't know, so it's just, but then the way it hits the stories, it's just all over the place, his face is all over there, his mugshots all over there, and it's just kind of like, yeah, but it's just a traffic violation. It's not that big of a deal. We all have those, He was speeding. Like, who doesn't speed through life? And but I think it's your job, it's our job to give those stories the platform that they deserve. I always felt like if a player stands up on the podium and be like, drink Coca-Cola, eat McDonald's, whatever, wherever, wear Nikes. He gets the largest platform possible. But if a guy stands up and be like, Black Lives Matter, police brutality, these are inequalities, they start chopping the platform from underneath them. They don't want you to use your platform to promote the good and promote change. They only want you to promote more things that bring more dollars to them. And the NFL's a lot like that because they don't want their attention on them because now they don't know how to do it because the NFL is reactive and not proactive. Right? They've never really been proactive about anything. They're always reacting and they act off emotion of how the world takes it, and then they try to take a point of view once they don't stand for anything, right? They stand for what keeps the dollar coming in. So when you have players who stand for things, it's a slap in the face to them because they don't want that attention to take dollars from them. They just worry about taking a dollar and making more profit. They do a good job at making profit too, but it's just like you gotta allow guys to be, and the fans. The fans like when say they'll be like in Green Bay, I'm sitting on the bench before the Seattle game, and my brother's, I don't even think he came out. Maybe he was taking a knee on the other side, and my daughter and my wife sit like right behind the bench, and over the bench it's just like, you stand up, you need to do this, you don't deserve to be in this country or wear a Green Bay Packers uniform. You can hear all these things. So if I'm hearing it, I know it's flying over my daughter's and my wife's head. And then my wife, I knew for sure because my wife that was the first thing she said after the game. So you think about going out there trying to perform for these people who are supposed to be your fans who actually don't really support you as people, right? So they just want you, they only support the team. They don't really support the ideologies of what makes you an entire person. And I think that's part of the issue as well. The fans have to come from the people in the stands have to come from a perspective of like they can promote change as well. They should celebrate the players that are trying to change the world and not just try to degrade them and try to, like, there were so many phone calls that came to the Packers about me. The team security came and pulled me to the side. He was like, hey, look, we're getting a whole lot of phone calls. I just want you to be careful out there. Right? And it's just like, well, damn, like, yeah, the only thing I did was sit down and I sat down for a good reason. So, like, even like that, like, he was like, so, I mean, just dealing with that while trying to perform is a thing on his own. Yes.
Who were your superheroes as a kid, and how does it compare to who you think of as a superhero as an adult?
Oh, my favorite superhero is Willy Wonka. Willy Wonka was just the most amazing person to me, and I always wanted to make chocolate. His chocolate factory, the Oompa Loompas, being mean to the kids. It was just like the perfect, I just loved everything about Willy Wonka, and I really think that's one reason why I'm super creative, because I always want to have something that was coveted like as chocolate. And my chocolate just happens to be books and movies now, but I still get to share my chocolate with the world. So Willy Wonka was like a big person of mine. I never really been like into sports. Like I like to play sports, but even to this day I don't watch sports. I never really, as a kid, I would rather be outside playing and never been watching it. So I never had like favorite players growing up. And actually every time I played for a team, I would just be like, oh, when I went to the Giants, I'd be like, man, Mark Bavaro was my favorite player growing up. I can't wait to, the play where Mark Bavaro and Jeremy Shockey played. It's amazing. Cowboys. Jay Novacek was amazing. Man, this is the history of tight ends here, so I always just made a tight end up, and the fans loved it. I went to, I've never seen Mike Ditka play in my life, but in Chicago, it's like, with the history of Mike Ditka and the way that he played, this is a phenomenal town for another great tight end, so I don't really watch sports. I've always been interested in, like, Darkwing Duck and, Bonkers. Kim Possible is one of my favorite, films. So I was lucky because I was born into a house. The year I was born, I feel like that's why, I think the timing of you, where you're, like if Steve Jobs wasn't born when he was born, someone else would have made the iPhone, right? So it's like being born in a certain time kind of paves the way for you to be what you're going to be. And I was born into a household, my family, and I was born in '87. So the great thing about this is I watch cartoons from the '70s. Like my favorite cartoon of all time is Tom and Jerry. So I watch cartoons from the '70s, or it's He-Man, you know, whatever it is. The '80s, you know, my mom watched all those shows. And then the '90s, when the boom really started to hit with Nickelodeon, Rugrats, and, you know, Disney. And then I was a part of the CGI run over too, when that first happened with Pixar and Toy Story. So I lived through like 8 generations of cartoons. So it makes sense that I love to make cartoons because I watched all those things as kids. So, and my mom liked those things as well. So I would just watch cartoons with my mom. I was a Saturday morning kid, you know, with my bowl of cereal and watching every single cartoon that comes on. Sorry.
Two-part question, go any way you want.
Yeah.
With all the challenges, you know, that are facing the black community that you're talking about, whether it's, you know, teen pregnancy or split households, you know, single-family households,
Yeah.
right? Or the education, what do you think can be done? What could we do as either individuals or as a company, especially in Boston? And then the second part is just, in this early election campaign, some of the candidates are talking about reparations, and that's like, I don't think it's happened in a long time, and that's gonna get more conversation, so.
Yeah, I mean, how do you document who deserves? Most of us don't even know which slaves were tied to us. You know what I'm saying? So that's the whole thing. But I think it's a myth about black fathers not being in the homes, right? That comes from back in the day where black men weren't allowed to get jobs. Like if they had jobs, like the women couldn't have welfare in the house if a man was in the household. So black men used to have to hide in the closet and things like this when they came to check it to see if there was a full family. So for the families to do better back in the day, it was better for them to leave because they would make more on welfare than he could ever make at his job. Right today, there's more black parents, black men in their kids' life than the media leads us on to believe. There's so many great fathers, and there's so many father figures in the community that we have. So I don't think the homes are as split as a lot of people like to think. There's a lot of, and if they are split, the dad is still part of the kid's life. So it's important to think that, like, when the house, even if the parents aren't together, the dad is still prominent in that kid's life. So when they just think about split households, they don't really go like, hey, is the dad coming over today? You know, or anything like that. I think as a company, the way that if you guys want to truly get involved is to pick a cause. Right? Pick a cause, and how can we invest in these kids and invest in their future, right? Go to their communities and help them build, this company makes so much money, you guys could build art centers, you guys could build projects that kids could actually come in and learn. Like, they could learn how to do the media. Y'all could build a little broadcasting school where you could team up with kids in the urban communities where they could come in and learn how to do television, learn how to film, learn how to edit, and just open your doors and open up the room to opportunity so that they could come in and learn from you guys. And I think that would be one of the most powerful things you could do, because not only are you opening your doors, but you're equipping them with skills that they can find interest in and they may really love. Whether it's learning how to write an article, taking a kid to the just to shadow you and talk to you about the article, or interview a player. You could build a program where it's like kids get to interview players. Take them to the locker room, and now you got these junior reporters that's working to find it because they love sports, but they all won't be able to play sports. But this is a good way to still be involved in sports if they really love the game. You can write about it for the rest of your life. You only can play for it for so long. So it's about opening the doors and providing opportunities, and those opportunities are going to be the most helpful thing that you could do for the community. So, and building them up and building them with skills.
I go a little different direction. Most of us are creators in here.
Yes.
In the spirit of a magician, like somebody like magic.
Yeah.
Everybody likes magic. What is your creative process? Because you seem to have a lot of things going on. Is your creative process by yourself? Do you get out in a community? And what have you learned about yourself throughout your creative process?
Yeah, so I think that the creativity, for me, I don't think a lot of people should be involved in the creative part, right? When the idea part, like in the part of bringing the idea to life, when I'm building the idea, I don't think that's the stage where I need other people to come in, right? Because I know a good idea when I see one, and I know a crappy idea when I see them too, because I have so many of them. So what I like to think of is once I get to the point where I feel like this idea is worth presenting it, that next stage is where it's everyone else's job that works with me to one-up it, right? To make my idea better. The bad ideas I keep and I mold on them, but I'm a paper person, so I love to do everything on paper. I still print everything out. I still draw everything by hand. I still, like, I'm very tactical. Is it tactile? Tactical? Yeah, that word. I'm very tactical, and I don't use the internet until later on in the process. I prefer to use books. So I always search for books because I don't like the librarian of the internet is the algorithm, and you could pay to push something to the top. Like no one clicks on page 30 when they go to Google, right? Everybody always get the first 2 pages, so everyone's using the same inspiration to come up with their ideas. So I feel like those things kind of limit. That's why everything starts to look the same, because everyone, the machine that they're supposed to use, you could pay. A librarian is not paid to push a book on you. They give you the best book that's possible. And there's nothing like going to a bookstore and stumbling upon a book or talking to somebody in a bookstore that recommends a book that you didn't even think of. They try to do it on Amazon with the algorithm, but then it's like, well, other people bought this book, and I'm like, I damn sure don't want to read all the same 5 books that the other 5 people have read, you know. So it's a lot of writing, a lot of building, and a lot of learning. So I never went to school for anything that I do. So like when I got ready to make my first movie, so what I did was I just read a bunch of books about making a movie and making movies and like the creative process of making a movie. And then I watched a lot of the BTS on the DVDs that you could watch where the directors talk about the movies and stuff like that. And then I watched like I took an online course to listen to like I read books about Tim Burton talking about his movies because he's one of my favorite directors, and then I'll just take the information I need from that, and then I build that up, and I just kind of build my own process. Like I don't know a lot of the jargon that people use when I talk to them, so sometimes I gotta like Google like, what the fuck are they talking about? Because I made up my own words. So I got a friend, I'm like, hey, Disney said this to me because I did a project for Disney, and all their thing was like abbreviated. I was like, God damn, what are they talking about right now? It sounds like this, but let me double check. And my boy was like, oh yeah, that's what you call this. We don't call it that in the industry, we call it this. I was like, all right, fuck this. Disney, y'all need to learn how to talk how I talk, right? I'm gonna practice on what y'all talking about, but for this project, just bear with me for a minute. So it's like I knew everything that they were talking about, that's what went into it, but I have been self-taught, so no one taught me the actual terms of what it was. So I research, most of my time is researching. Tiara's my research assistant, so I'll call her and I'll be like, hey man, what's the psychology behind choose your own adventure, right? Because I'm interested in like how do they have does that, given the reader power, ownership in the story, does it change the way they feel about the story at the end? Do they feel more rewarded by being able to dictate what happens to the character, or do they like it better when they just read the story and you tell them the character? There's 2 different types of people, right? There's the ones that want to have their handprint on the story, and the other ones just want to be entertained through the story. I also don't believe in disciplines, right? Like right now I'm studying game making because there's so many things that highlight the endorphins when you play games and how the player is rewarded that you could also use that same psychology in stories that you tell as well. So it's like, how can I take all these multiple disciplines and make them work together? So I think the best thing is to explore things that you like I'll just do pottery just to learn about pottery. You know, I did that for I took like an 8-week course on clay throwing on the machine, and so I just try to diversify my thinking. So, and then that makes me better as a creator. So I don't try to stick to one thing. I don't really have a skill. I guess my discipline would be storytelling, but I think of storytelling works in every area in life. We're all trying to tell a story. The chairs tell a story. If I came here in my pajamas right now, I'd be telling you guys a story. It'd be like, damn, he either just woke up or he just don't give a today. But yeah, so I like a lot of paper, a lot of cutting out. I always say, like, if J.K. Rowling wrote Harry Potter on the subway, that makes sense to me, right? I don't think she's behind a wood oak desk writing Harry Potter, you know what I'm saying? Like, the best things happen out in the world, so I'm always ready for inspiration. Like, I collect people, I collect words, I collect names, because I always have characters and I can't think of names for them. So when I meet people, if I like their name, I jot their name down, I jot places down, and all those things I collect. And I don't have to use them all at one time, but I could always go back and pull, like, oh, I remember that place, this struck me, and I could build, because I'm very into imagery, so I could build out the worlds by collecting all the places that I go. So sometimes I just take pictures of stuff. And I like people too. It's like, man, it's kind of creepy, but people do it to me all the time, so I feel like it's okay. Hey, stand still. Let me get a picture of you. All right, yeah, good. I love your shirt. So yeah, so I do a lot of collecting. I collect a lot of things. books. I love books. I love reading. I read at least one book every 2 weeks. And if I'm lucky, if I'm not traveling, I can get about 3 or 4, and that's a great 2 weeks for me. So I think the number one thing as a creator that you have to know more about the world than the reader knows, right? I got to know more about my character than the readers know, so that way I can always withhold things and leave them space to think about the characters. They have questions which you know the answer to, but they make up their own answer. It's kind of cool when they come up with the same answer that you have because you didn't give it to them, and they just kind of discovered it themselves.
All right, Martellus, thank you for enlightening us all, and thanks everyone for coming.
Oh, that's cool. That's great.
Wrap it up.
Should I keep this shit to myself or should I share it with the world? And it's just like, yeah.
It was awesome.
Yeah, so like, it's cool. Yeah, and that's why I feel like what we do at the Imagination Agency is a lot more important than what they do at Disney or DreamWorks or anywhere else, because the stories they tell and have been told for so long, and these are all new, but we're telling stories with purpose, intent, and impact. So it's like I get to make cool stuff the same way Disney's does, but it affects the world in a different way. So that's like the coolest thing about the Imagination Agency, and I'm very excited that you guys had me here. It's like it's kind of cool. And it's crazy, you guys talk about diversification too, and you just look around the room, there's like 3 black people in this room, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, you know what I'm saying? So it's just like, yeah, so it's like how, that's a reflection of what, as the room is. If you go to a restaurant, it doesn't look like that, you know what I'm saying? If you get on a bus, it doesn't look like that. If you go to a classroom, it doesn't look like that. But in a lot of the corporations, that's how it looks, which is crazy because most of your classmates you go to school with probably were from all walks of life, but the people that you work with don't seem to be the same. And those ideas from all those different walks of life is only going to make the company better. And that's how my company's pretty crazy. You would think I only had black people work for me, but I don't. Yeah, I have mostly women work for me, work with me. No one works for me, but yeah, so it's pretty cool. But thank you for your time. Thank you for listening.